One of the things we have to figure out is what works for us as individuals, right? If you go into a room and you throw this topic in a meeting, in a topic discussion meeting, you'll get, and this is the beauty of it, for me, this is the beauty of it. If I throw this topic out, matter of fact, I'm chairing my men's meeting, might be a great topic for my men's meeting Friday night, and you'll get a slew of different solutions. Somebody's going to say they're going to pray. Somebody's going to say they're going to meditate. Somebody's going to say whatever. So you're going to get a whole litany of different ways that different people handle it. And then you have to figure out what it is for you that works, because what works for other people may not work for you.
I'm Matt.
Hey, I'm Steve.
Hey, I'm John.
This is the Sober Friends Podcast. We're here for the sober curious, the new guy, and the old timer. We're here to talk about the stuff anyone looking to live alcohol-free has to face day to day, and how we overcame those struggles. We speak for no 12-step group, but we do try to remain anonymous. You're not alone. This is the Sober Friends Podcast.
How about those things we can't control? I'll tell you, Steve, the things I can't control are the things that make me nuts for a bunch of different reasons, and I think it is a reason for drinking. What do you think? You ever struggle with those things you can't control?
Matt, I think most of the things in my life are things I can't control. And I mean that. It doesn't mean I don't try to control them. It doesn't mean I don't want to control them. But the reality is that I'm so powerless over so many things. Mm-hmm. And recovery's helped me sort of appreciate that and accept that. And not totally. I'm never going to be perfect at something like that. But it's eased it a bit for me, and it helps me, for the most part, on most days, understand that. And for that, I have a better life, right? When I stop trying to control all those things, that my life's just better. And again, one of my character defects, I just talked about this in my Monday meeting. One of my character defects is control, and it's control issues. And I work really hard on it, and I have to work on it almost daily to allow me to have some peace of mind and not be stepping on other people's toes and just frustrating myself, really. And like you said, and get to a place where I get so upset that I think, maybe I should have a drink and make myself feel better.
I don't think I am a big control person, and I've gotten that feedback from people around me. My issue is I worry a lot. And there are things that happen in my life that I worry about that I don't have control over. That situation X is going to come along and it's going to ruin my life. And it causes me a lot of anxiety that there's nothing I can do about it. I'd feel a lot more in control if I could do something about it.
Right. Yeah, that's a little bit of fear of the future too.
Oh, yes.
I used to do that, especially, and I mean, I remember being at your place in life where I had young children and trying to figure out some of that stuff, and always worried about that. Always worried, like I know we've shared before, and we share off of this podcast about that imposter feeling and that fraud feeling, and always waiting for the world to collapse. I've shared the story on this podcast before about like feeling when I moved into my house, and my house is not a great house. It's not but I mean, it's a nice house, feeling like somehow I was a fraud for living in this house and really feeling that way, like in my own house, that somehow I didn't deserve it. So yeah, all those things, like those are things those are real. Those are real issues for many of us. And I know it was for me. It took me a while. I don't feel like that today. And I'm at a different place in my life too. But, so I can feel like that too. Really worry about that stuff. And today, again, the program has helped me so much in that area that, it says in our big book at one point, we'll relax and take it easy. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I first read that, I'm like, man, I can't wait till I get to that point. And I've gotten to that point for the most part. Again, not all the time, not every day, not every minute, but for the most part, I relax and take it easy.
Dig into this a little bit more. What program-wise has helped you with what you can't control or what you can control?
I think the biggest thing that helped me is first of all, understanding myself, which is doing step work, right? So for me, that was doing the 4th and 5th step on a regular basis, and then doing a 10th step, although I don't religiously and officially do a 10th step way some people do, but I certainly check my own motives today and things of that nature. But doing that kind of work so that I understand who I am and like where my faults are, where the points that can get me in trouble. Talked about it on the way home last night from our Joe and Charlie with Rich. A big thing about ego, right? I talked about how, this big thing that I had to sort of check my ego. And I've told the story before where my biggest check on on my ego was on a hiking trip with John when I was sort of bragging about hiking with a broken toe, and this old woman looks at me and went, "Oh, I have a broken toe. You can do a lot with a broken toe." And it was my lesson for ego. Like that day, I had that lesson. Like, "Oh, you big full of shit ego guy. Look at you." You were talking the other day about Scott Galloway, Prof G, right?
Yes.
And I was listening to a similar pod. I don't know if he's on a couple of podcasts, but he was talking about his ego one day, and he said on the podcast, he says, "You know how you know that I'm building a second home in Colorado Springs?" He says, "Because I'll tell you that I'm building a home." Right? Like that's what So that's me unchecked, right? So the steps have helped me sort of figure that out, and then sort of told me you got to work on that. And again, it's been a long haul for me. It's not a short thing. It's a long haul for me. I've been able to work on it. And the second thing, and maybe the most important thing for me, is me surrounding myself with other alcoholics. And by that, I mean, I do a lot of stuff, Joe and Charlie's, and listening to other alcoholics, how they deal with that stuff. And identifying my struggles with their struggles and listening to how they do it. Because I get a lot of I get a lot of like, "Oh, that's me too," right? I listen to people share and I go, "Oh, that's me too." And I say, okay, I need to work on that. So that's sort of how it works for me and how it fits for me. And it's why when I find good meetings, which I have pretty good meetings right now, I go to those meetings regularly so that I could hear those people say those things and help me.
The benefit of having a fellowship is that you can learn from other people's experience. If you go in with the right mindset into a 12-step group, you can learn from each other. It also goes into another word that I think of when I think of what I can control, what I can't control, and that's humility. Yeah. Humility, not necessarily I need to humiliate you. Yeah. It's I need to be humble enough to open up my ears that I don't have all the answers. Or what I think is the answer might be the wrong answer. Mm-hmm. Being open to being wrong and to learn something different is something that's pretty important. In a 12-step group, you are fortunate that you are around lots of people who may have lots of wisdom. And there are also people who don't listen to what they're saying. Just because you hear something at a 12-step meeting doesn't mean it's wise. You do have to, this is the, as our pal Jim said, and this is the hard part, is knowing the difference between what you can control and what you can't, and having that wisdom. Wisdom also means understand what's good advice and what's bad advice. Bad advice is not too often, but you got to know what's good and what's bad. But also being open to an experience of hearing somebody else's experience and not repeating it. If you hear enough times that, you know what, I can't control this and I'm making myself crazy. Right. Maybe you should stop worrying about it and making yourself crazy. I'm not great at that. I think I live in the future of wreckage of the future, but it's worth having this topic just so I can think this one through.
one of the things we have to figure out is what works for us as individuals, right? If you go into a room and you throw this topic in a meeting, in a topic discussion meeting, you'll get, and this is the beauty of it for me. This is the beauty of it. If I throw this topic out, matter of fact, I'm chairing my men's meeting. Might be a great topic for my men's meeting Friday night. And you'll get a slew of different solutions. Somebody's going to say they're going to pray. Somebody's going to say they're going to meditate. Somebody's going to say whatever. So you're going to get a whole litany of different ways that different people handle it. And then you have to figure out what it is for you that works, because what works for other people may not work for you. And then you need to know who are the people that you look up to, you trust.
Yep.
That you trust what they're saying is coming from the right place, and then you can take that. And we have those people I know we both have those people in our lives where we hear that, and and again, it's why I go to the meetings I go to, right? It's why I go to those meetings, because at those meetings I know there's going to be a certain group of people there that I can listen to and get something out of. And I could also bring something to those meetings too, but I go to those meetings to help myself, go to those meetings to help other people and add to them, but I go to those meetings to make sure that I don't fall into my own abyss, if you will, my own abyss of craziness, and because I can get crazy over those things I can't control. I mean, literally insane and just out of sorts, where it's a dangerous place for me, and it leads me to really bad behavior. And when it's left unchecked, it will absolutely lead me to drinking if I leave it unchecked.
Some of my worst behaviors have been after worrying that something bad is going to happen based on something I can't control.
Right.
This week, it was announced that at very high levels of management, they were moving some people around. So somebody who had been a president of the organization is moving out, and they're bringing somebody in, making this person a COO, giving some responsibilities. But this is layers and layers and layers and layers and layers up from where I am. When you have something that big, and especially economically, our company could be doing a lot better, it makes you start worrying. Are they going to eliminate my department? Are they going to eliminate me? Which then moved me into, I'm a fraud. I'm not doing enough. And when they say things like, don't worry about your task, worry about your contribution, I'm like, I'm not doing enough. And there are times that I'm just not very busy. And that could be I'm just fast at getting my stuff done. But I feel as though if I don't have a big pile of work, I am at risk. And it makes me feel that I'm only a vessel. I'm only riding on this. I have no control over my life. They could pluck me out, and then there are no I'm not going to have a job after that, and I'm going to lose my house. Mm-hmm. And it goes to that spiral of all these bad things. I will be found out, and I'm going to lose everything. And all of this is an illusion. It's going to go away. And change will only be change for the worse.
Hey, you can always go back to doing traffic on the radio, Matt.
Not really. They don't really have those anymore.
No, they don't. But listen, I was there. I was there for years. For years, I sat in my position, that job, and my company got consolidated, say 4 times, right? 4 times, a merger, and then 3 sales. And each time I sat there and same thing. And I can remember one time sitting there, and it wasn't a big company. It wasn't anywhere like where you're working or where I was working at the end of my career. But it was $120 million company, so it was a decent size. But I saw that whole level of management that you're talking about, the COOs. I saw those people leaving and not being replaced. And everybody's like, "What's up? What's going on?" And I'm like, it looks like to me like they're probably getting ready to sell the company. Like they're just, they're sucking some of the money out of it, and they're just moving. And sure enough, 3 months later, they sold the company. People came up to me like, wow. But every time that happened, I felt the same way. Like, oh, they're going to find out. I'm going to be a fraud, blah, blah, blah. But it never happened. I was never let go. I was literally one of the last people out the door. Actually, in my building, I mean, I may have been the second last person out the door in the facility, right? I mean, they kept me on to sell all the equipment, me and a couple other guys, not just me. And not only that, but they still, it was the strangest thing. I still got paid my regular commission, and I was able to sell all this equipment. Like, I walked out of there with a huge commission check at the end of this whole 3 months. That there was like 3 months we were just liquidating the whole company. So it just worked out. It just worked out. And by that time I had relaxed about it a little bit. But I know where you're sitting. I know how you feel. You're at that point where, you're like, wow, look at this could go. But you work for a big company, and your company's not going away. It may be restructured, but these are the things we have to work on. These are the things we have to figure out. And the main thing is, for us, and I don't think there's a threat for either one of us, like we're going to go drinking over this stuff, but it's a quality of life issue is what it is. And it's an issue that, again, if I'm not paying close attention to, it could start. Our buddy Timmy said it last night. He was talking about how, his train of thought goes from he doesn't want to do something. He starts, doing his typical Timmy whining stuff to, oh, screw it. I'll just burn the whole stuff down, right? The whole place down. And I get it. That's the way I work too. Like, it goes that quickly in my brain sometimes. And, I work on that today. And I have a lot of gratitude. I guess that's another thing too. I have a lot of gratitude for life today, which I didn't always have. So you got to find what works for you. And again, I'm a broken record, but I find what works for me by talking to other alcoholics. I do. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. I need to go, oh, that's working for that guy. Maybe I should try it.
Recently, looking at the news, when I say recently, back in November, it came to my head that there are people in other countries who are in very difficult political situations. Lots of countries, most countries don't have a good government. What we have in the United States and what you have in most of Western Europe, places like Japan, and I'm throwing out a handful of countries, Canada. These have very stable governments where the rights of people are respected. And most of the rest of the world, that's not the case. We're the exception. And in those countries that are sliding into authoritarianism or totalitarianism, the majority of countries, there's still people there who have good lives, who have joy. And I thought a lot about that if there is a political decision or election that I don't agree with, I can choose to still have joy in my life and have a good life and be prosperous. It doesn't mean I'm putting my head in the sand. It's meaning I can still find meaning. And lo and behold, I saw somebody online who said this exact same thing recently. And it's very difficult to have that mindset, especially if you watch a lot of news or listen to podcasts and they're like, oh my God, the sky is falling. But you can choose to still have joy in your life, because the way a government works, I have very little control over. I have more control over the city council in my town or the school committee. And at that, I don't have a lot, but for the most part, they'll probably take my call, and maybe I have influence.
Right.
Once I go above that, that closes more and more and more until we get up to the federal level. So if I sit there and worry about what I see on the news, I'm wasting a lot of energy because I can't control it. And even when things do go my way, they're still not going to go my way. Even if you've got the guy that you want elected, they're still going to do things you don't agree with anyways. It never is. It's never perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm trying with that mindset of where is there still joy in life, even if things are not the way I want them to be.
You know, one of the advantages I had in my career is I did international sales. And I did a lot of sales into Pakistan early in my career. Pakistan was a very open market. It's not as open as it used to be. And they were always in the news. They were in the news now. They're in the news often for the government changing, like one of those typical places, right? Like you're talking about, not great government, a lot of military influence and things like that. And I can remember talking to one of my biggest customers from Pakistan, who is now he always was in Toronto, up in Canada, but he was from Pakistan. His family still lived there. His father and his mother still live there now. But anyway, I remember talking to him like, what about the situation with the government? And he used to say to me, it doesn't matter who's running the government. It doesn't affect our business. And I found that to be strange. But the truth is, it's the same way it is for us, right? Yeah. And that's what you're saying. Like, I realize today, it doesn't matter. Let's be honest, it doesn't matter to me personally who's president. It's not going to affect my life that much. And it may affect people's lives that I know and love, but it's not going to affect mine that much. So I've been able to sort of figure that. And I think what you're saying is it makes a great point. That you can find joy in almost any situation, right? And you can find joy and happiness in many places. And I think that is one of the things we have to remember is, that we should have some of that joy. We should be able to find how to do that in our own lives, which is what you're saying, right? How do I find that place that I could live in where even in this place where I'm feeling threatened, insecure, I'm not sure about my future, that I can still find joy. And I think you can. I mean, you got a great family, right? You do. Mm-hmm. Families are tough. Families come with a lot of dynamics in them, but you have a great family, and there's joy to be found in your life. I know there is because I talk to you enough. So, but sometimes it's hard to see it in the day-to-day mess, right? That's what it is. That day-to-day chore of just living life. It's hard to find that sometimes.
Some of this comes from our pasts. This is where the idea of defects and sin, like don't be a sinner. Think about that in religion. Don't be a sinner. Well, based on how you grew up and your circumstances, you're more likely you could do some things that would be considered a sin. If I have no food, I might shoplift. Not because I'm a bad person, because I don't have another option.
Right.
I'm going to take the risk and I'm going to shoplift. I might worry about things and have anxiety around things out of my control if I grew up in a really unstable household, which I did. This is very current because I had a therapy session today about trauma, and I realized some places of where some trauma could be. I grew up in a home, and I have almost no memories of this, but my father was an alcoholic, and he argued and beat my mother. And we had a dog that used to terrorize us. I remember bits and pieces, but for the most part, I don't. But if I'm living in a household as a young child where there's lots of fighting, lots of screaming at any time, day or night, that's going to put you on edge. You may not remember it, but the body will remember that. Mm-hmm. And you can, and I realize this of how easily startled I can be. And it may have roots back to that. So if you grow up with that, you may worry about things outside of your control because you're conditioned that the shoe may drop at any moment.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean you've developed some type of character defect. It's been baked in.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have to work on it. So therapy is always a good thing if you are in addiction, on top of whatever your method of addressing recovery is. But this is part of my story, and realizing that can help me get to the point of, well, why do I worry about things out of my control? I think there's a lot of what can help you if you're in this boat. And if you're listening to this, you have to probably be in this boat. I don't know if there's too many who drink normally who would get much out of this podcast.
Right.
I can sure tell you, if you did drink poorly, you probably did. You probably do. This is one of those situations where ask yourself why of these, and maybe get out a notebook. I'm worried about losing my job because of a reorg. Well, why? Was there trauma in the past? I've lost my job because of a layoff in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things that make me remind me of that. And then if that happens, then what? Or, what's your support system? If you can map some of this stuff all out, and also add the question of where can you still find joy even in those situations, you probably can diffuse it pretty easily. That's at least my method. I have to kind of go very intensive here, but if you map some of this stuff out, especially when your mind is clear, you can bring yourself down.
I remember going back, and I remember I was doing a lot of work. I had met up a bunch of new guys, actually some guys from, matter of fact, Traveling John, who we haven't seen at the Monday night. He was coming back for a while.
Mm-hmm. Maybe he's traveling.
Yeah. And he was one of the guys we had done a Joe and Charlie with him over Zoom and stuff like that. So there's a few new guys who I was hanging out with. And, I lost my job when I was 62 years old, right? That's when they got rid of, that's when they sold my company, and I was 62 years old. And luckily for me, by that time, I had gotten to the point where I wasn't panicked over that. But I do remember, that's a tough time to lose a job. Luckily I had skills, and I was in a business where I knew I could go to work. I wasn't going to have to, put a resume together, because I was going to stay in the business and I had people who knew me. But, it's interesting, when you talk about the trauma, and you've talked about it too. And one of the things I've said, and I've never done a lot of work on it. I don't think I probably will at this point in my life. But there's huge portions of my childhood I don't remember. And I grew up in an alcoholic family too, right? I grew up in a house that was scarcity. Food was an issue, clothing was an issue, and so there's no question that I grew up with a lot of trauma, and I'm sure that affects why I blocked out lots of those memories. I don't believe I did a lot of therapy. I don't believe we talked about it. I don't believe there was any abuse. Any type of sexual abuse or anything like that in my past. But, I don't remember anything even vaguely like that. But anyway, but therapy is a huge tool. I mean, like I said, I did it for years, and it helped me with myself, and it helped me with my marriage, and it helped me with my relationships with my kids. So you do got to find that. And I don't know. One of the things I found, and this is very recently, we've talked a little bit about here, is that I just find that I find joy walking in the woods. I mean it. I do. And I've started to do something that I've never done before, is I started to solo hike. Nothing big, but locally. And I find that I like solo hiking as much as I like when I hike with other people. I like being out there by myself. I like having that solitude. And I find a lot of peace out there. And I, because there's some weekends like I'm like, oh, I'm glad I'm going out by myself, right? Like I'm always happy to go out with somebody, but if nobody's going to go, I'm like, oh no, I'm glad that I can go out by myself. So like I said, you have to find those things. You have to find those things that are important to you. And for me, I just keep trying different stuff. And today, I do like the big book said. I relax and I take it easy. I really do. I relax and I take it easy, and as much as possible. I said to my wife and I were just having this conversation the other night, and I told her, I literally was telling her how much I loved her and how much I cared about her. I'm like, I know that through the day-to-day baggage stuff that we both carry this baggage into this relationship, sometimes that's hard to see. Sometimes it's hard to understand. But it's true. And I think that's all relationships and all aspects of our lives. There's just so much stress and baggage going on that it's hard to sort of peel that away and see the joy, see the happiness, see the contentments. As Jimmy says, it's the hard part.
Yep.
It's the hard part. Trying to find that, what's good, what's real, what's not. That is the hard part.
I have a new project that I'm doing that I'd like you to subscribe to. I've moved our newsletter off of a strictly email newsletter and over to Substack, which you can find at soberfriendspod.substack.com. It's called the Sober Friends Dispatch. At least once a week, I'm putting something out. Usually it's the topic around what the podcast is, and I will kind of blog it out a bit. But I'd love for you to subscribe. It's a way of staying connected. I might do a little bit more because the typing is kind of therapy for me. So I'd love for you to subscribe to the Sober Friends Dispatch. Steve, have a wonderful evening.
You too, Matt. Thanks.
We will see everybody back next week. Bye, everybody.